Hello everyone, welcome again. Well, in this video, we are going to discuss how to read the configuration from app.config file. So app.config file is a file which will contain all the configuration required by our framework. Now inside the app.config file, we need to specify the configuration in a certain format, and the format will be key value pair where key should be unique. Now in order to read the configuration from app.config, Visual Studio provide a utility, and that utility is system.configuration. So in order to use that utility, we need to refer the system.configuration DLL file in our project. Now inside this system.configuration DLL file or assembly, there is a class called configuration manager which help us to read the configuration from app.config file. Inside the configuration manager class, there is a property called app setting. The app setting has a method called get. Now there are two overloaded versions of get method. The first one takes index of the configuration as the argument, and the second one takes key as an argument. So key means whatever the unique key we have specified for our configuration. And the most important thing is that whatever the configuration you specify inside the app config will be treated as string. Okay, so let me switch to my Visual Studio. So here I have a packages.config file. I'm going to copy and paste it inside our project. After that, I'm going to rename this file to app.config. And I'm going to do certain modification inside this file. First of all, I will remove the package tag and add the configuration tag. Inside the configuration, I will add the app setting tag. Now whatever the configuration which we are going to specify in the form of key value pair should be present inside the app setting tag. In other words, you can consider this as a default template for our configuration file, and all the configuration should go inside the app setting tag. So inside this, I'm going to specify the configuration in the form of key value pair. So add key, let's say browser, and its value is Firefox. Similarly, add key as username and value is user, and for the password. So the value will be pass. Okay. So in this manner, we need to specify our configuration inside the app setting tag. Now once this is done, so as I told you, we are going to take the help of configuration manager class which is coming from system.configuration. So in order to use it, we need to refer it. So inside the Visual Studio, just do a right click on references and select add reference. Now here search for system.configuration, okay, and add the reference to our project. So inside the reference, this is the DLL file which we need to refer. So inside this DLL or inside this assembly, there is a class called configuration manager, which is going to help us to read the data from the app.config file. So if I go inside the class definition of this class, as you can see here, we have a app setting as a property, and inside this name value collection there is a method called get. So first one take the index of the configuration, and the second one takes the key of the configuration. Okay, so in order to use it, as you can see here, the app setting is a static property, so I need to call it using the class name. So configuration manager dot app setting dot get, and here I'm going to specify the key instead of index. You can also specify the index, but it's better to specify the key so that you will be aware that which configuration you are reading. So the key for browser is this, and similarly for other configurations. So console dot write line. Okay, so here the key is username and here the key is password. I will put a debug point here, build our project and run this script in debug mode. I'm going to copy this line and paste inside the immediate window. So immediate window is the window which is going to give the runtime value of an variable or a statement. So as you can see here, we are able to read the value for the key browser. Similarly for the next one, so user. So this type of logic we are going to use to read the configuration for our framework. Okay, if you look at the test output, so these are the value based on the key you supplied. So moving on, after this, I'm going to create an interface. There will be an interface named iConfig. And the reason behind of creating this interface is that this interface will have some common method or basic method which will be required for our framework. So let us suppose in the current situation we are using the app.config file for reading our configuration. It is also possible that in future you might use comma separated file, that is CSV file or XML file for loading the configuration. So all those class which is going to read the data from the respective file should have this basic method, because these are very important to initialize our framework. So that is why I'm going to create an interface which will contain this method, and all the classes have to implement that interface. Okay. So inside my Visual Studio, I will go inside the interface directory and add an interface. So let me call it as iConfig. So here I need to specify the basic method which the class is going to implement and which are very important for our framework to initialize. And again, I make it public so that any class can access this interface. But before that, as you can see here, the browser can be of means the browser can be either Firefox, Chrome, or Explorer. So I need to have certain constant which is going to represent this. So for this, I'm going to create a enum. The enum is enumeration, or in other words, it is used to create the named constant. So inside the configuration directory, I will add a class called browser type. Then I'm going to change it to enum. So first let me make it public. And whatever the entity which I specify inside this enum, that will be termed as a name constant. Okay, so let's say Firefox, Chrome, and Explorer. Okay, the reason why I'm saying it is a named constant, because internally the compiler is going to assign the value to each of them starting from 0. So let us suppose I want to access this. So here inside our unit test, you can directly access like this: console dot write line browser type dot Firefox, Chrome, or Explorer, and I'm going to typecast to int, so it is going to print the constant value for this. Similarly for Chrome. So first of all, using the enum, it is very easy to access the different type of browser, and also internally they are become a named constant. So if I run this script, so if I look at the output, as you can see here, 0 and 1, so this value are automatically assigned to the entity which is present inside the enum by the compiler. Okay. Now once this is done, so the main purpose of using enum from the browser type is first of all easy to access, and they are internally as a named constant, treated as named constant. So inside my configuration, I'm going to add a class called App.config reader, which is going to read the data from app setting. Again, I will make this class as public so that any other class can access this class. Now before that, in the setting, I'm going to add one more class, and the name of this class is App.config keys. Now inside this class, I'm going to specify all the keys which is present inside the config file, that is app.config. And the reason behind it is that, so let us suppose you change the key. So all you need to do is come back here inside this class and change the value of that key, and it will be applicable to all the script which are using this key for reading the configuration. Okay, so here again I will make this class as public const string. So first key is browser. So here I have used a keyword called const, which is used to declare a constant. That means once I have used this keyword with a variable, that variable become a constant, and you cannot modify its value during the runtime or not even in the compile time. Okay, so using this keyword, I'm specifying this browser is a constant. So the value will be this key. And similarly for other keys which is present inside the app config. So username, and password. Okay, now once this is done, again I will go back to app config reader, and this class is going to implement the iConfig interface. Okay, so if I go inside the iConfig interface, I will specify some common method which are very important for our framework to initialize. So first one is string get user name, which we are going to use to read the username for application, or you can say for logging inside the application. Similarly for get password. And also I'm going to get the browser also from the app config file. So I need to have a method called get browser, which is going to decide that what type of browser I need to launch. So as you can see here in the browser type, I have already defined the constant, that is Firefox, Chrome and Explorer. So the return type of this method, that is app.get browser, should be of browser type. In this case I have mentioned it is string because username and password will be string. So the return type will be our enum. Okay, now once this is done, so the interface which is implemented by app configurator have to provide the implementation for this method. So here I'll put the implementation. So first of all, here I'll use the return to return the value, and I will use configuration manager.app_settings.get, and here I'll specify the key. So app fconfig keys dot password, and similarly for our username. So this will be username. Now in this case, as we are returning the string value, and we know that all the data which is present inside the app config is of type string, so we don't need to do some additional logic to get the string value. But here, as we know that the config file will have everything inside the string, and the return type of this method is a enum. So we need to do some additional configuration to convert our string value into enum. So for that I will use string browser equal to, I will use the same statement to read the browser. So this will be your browser, and here I'm going to typecast to the enum type. So for that we have a utility method enum.parse, which takes two arguments. First the type of enum, so in our case the type of enum is browser type, and the value which I need to typecast. So this is the value, and the return type of this method is a object. So for example return this I'll date. So as you can see here, it is returning an object, and I need to typecast it to the browser type because our method is returning the browser type. So here I will typecast it to browser type enum. Okay. So let me tell you once again what I'm doing here. As we know that whatever the data we specify inside the app config will be in the form of string. So this statement is going to return me a string. And as I have already defined an enum which contain different types of browser. So this method is already returning that type of enum. So I need to typecast this browser to enum. So there is a method called parse which is going to typecast the browser to enum type, and the return type of this method is object. So we need to again typecast it to the browser type enum. Okay. Now once this is done, I will again get back to our test class, and here in order to access this, that is our app config reader, first of all I need to create the reference variable of interface. So when I type like this, I config equal to new app config reader. So when I type this, that means I am creating a reference variable of type interface, that is iconfig, and using that reference variable I am pointing to the derived class object, and this thing we have already discussed in our interface chapter. Okay, so this is perfectly valid where I'm using the interface reference variable to point to the derived class object. So the advantage here of using interface is that first I have enforced that these three methods should be there because these are the method which is very important for initializing of a framework. And let us suppose in future you create one more class which is going to read the data from XML. So here I will do XML reader public, and this is going to implement the iconfig interface, and it will provide its own implementation of reading the data. So here I can directly change it back to XML reader. Okay, so now the same object is going to give us the detail from the XML reader. So that is the advantage of using interface. Okay, so I'm going to just comment out these statements, otherwise they can throw the exception during the runtime. And here I'll specify return null. Okay, let me comment out the entire three methods. Now once this is done, so here I can use console dot write line, let's say browser comma config dot get browser, similarly for username and password, username and password. So this will be configuration dot get username, and this will be config dot get password. And if I run this script, so let me build it first. So okay, we are getting the error that okay, this has to implement the interface. So I'm going to uncomment this and also remove this thing. So let it be like that. So let me build it. So our errors are gone, and let me run the test. So test is finished. If you look at the output, so browser Firefox, username user, password pass. Now the advantage here is that let's say I change the value to Chrome, and if I rerun the script, so if you look at the output, now this time the Chrome browser. Okay, and let's say I modify the key to browser type. So all I need to do is to update in our App.config key constant. Okay, and again if I run the script, everything will be taken care by the framework. So that was the reason I create a separate class which will hold the constant keys. Okay, this is done. If you look at the output, as you can see here. So in this manner you can read the configuration from app.config file, and this is the structure which we need to follow so that our framework will be flexible enough to enhance the capability of reading the configuration from other file system also, such as XML or comma separated file. Okay, so that's all for this video, and thanks for watching.